Good morning. You're watching Frankly Speaking, and now we have with us acclaimed documentary filmmaker Nakul Sani. Good morning, sir. Okay, Mr. Sani produced the acclaimed documentary Izzat Nagari Ki Asabya Betiyan, which has been renowned throughout the country. Now, before we proceed with the interview, let's have a look at the trailer.
हमारी जो लड़की ब्याही जाती है उसको हम 7 पीढ़ी का रिश्ता मानते हैं और वो रिश्ता नाता आपसी में ही निभता, ज्यादा हाई और लो में नहीं निभता।
किसी भी कीमत पर रिश्तों को कलंकित करने वाले इन लोगों को बख्शा नहीं जाएगा।
जैसे जैसे आदमी जागरूक होता जा रहा है तो इनको एक अंदर ही अंदर डर महसूस होता है कि जो एक कुर्सी पे ये हमेशा से बैठे रहे हैं और वो कुर्सी मतलब हिलनी शुरू हो चुकी है इनकी, जो हमारी प्रधानता है, जो हमारा वर्चस्व है, वो कहीं ख़त्म ना हो जाए।
कई बार तो निर्ममता के साथ मतलब उनको मार के पेड़ के ऊपर लटका दिया था ताकि लोग देखें और उससे सबक लें।
सब कायदे कानून, सारे नियम, सारे रीति रिवाज, जो सारी परंपराएं, वो एक औरत के ऊपर ही लागू होती हैं।
Now, Mr. Sani, of all the issues plaguing the nation, why did the issue of Khap Panchayat and honor killings catch your attention?
See, we were planning to make a documentary film about 2 years back, and this is at least when we began to discuss what the film could be about. I mean, this is really a topic that came to my mind very instinctively, and it's not like we were debating other topics as well. This just came very instinctively, and we decided to go ahead with this. I mean, I was very keen and I was very clear that this is what I wanted my film to be about. I think on the one hand there was so much, the media was talking about it. There was so much media coverage and a lot of reportage. So I think a lot of the reportage was very superficial and very surface level, largely sensationalist. But I think what really got my attention was that living in Delhi, there is this geographical proximity to whatever was happening. The fact that it's not only happening the fact that it was happening in Delhi itself. I mean, if you see Gaurav Saini's case in my film, Gaurav lives just 2 or 3 kilometers away from where I used to stay at one time, and after which then we travelled, and then Haryana. I mean, Delhi is sort of bordered by Haryana on 3 sides, so and Western UP on one side. So and these areas are really the hotbeds of this crime. So there was that geographical proximity, and it was becoming very difficult to ignore. And moreover, I think there was a proximity at another level that ultimately most of the victims were very often people roughly my age group, and so it was too close to sort of ignore and not look at it more deeply. And when I say it was close, at the same time it was very distant also. It was very distant because I know there aren't any similar pressures at my house. I will always be free to choose who I want to marry, if I want to marry, when I want to marry. And I'll always be given that freedom to take certain decisions about my life. So this concept of honor at one level, I mean, though I had a theoretical understanding, but it was at the same time a very alien concept for me in my day-to-day life and practice. So I think what I was trying to do was, I think what we tried to, I mean, so while there was this proximity, like I said earlier, at the same time there was this distance, and was I trying to bridge the gap? No, but I think I just to put it simply, I was just trying to understand this topic better. I mean,
make sense of
it really, absolutely, yeah.
So, what sort of myths were you trying to bust about the Khap Panchayats and the whole phenomena of honor killing itself?
No, I didn't start out with this intention of busting myths,
No, but the documentary does tackle some issues. It delves deep into it.
No,
it just doesn't place them at face value, right?
No, absolutely. What I'm trying to say is that well, there is this one very big myth that they've, I think, been able to very successfully propagate at one level. Is that a lot of the Khap Panchayatis today in interviews and stuff, and representatives of different Khaps will often be saying that, we're not against intercaste marriages, we're only against same gotra marriages. Now that's a whole lot of nonsense, because other than the Manoj Babli marriage and probably one or two odd such cases in the last couple of decades, you will never find, and especially among Jats in Haryana, you will very rarely find the same gotra marriage. They don't really happen because for whatever reasons. The truth is that at the ground level, under the garb of actually fighting same gotra marriages, what they're actually trying to stop is intercaste marriages and self-choice marriages. When a girl especially, when a young woman expresses her desire to not only live with the person of her liking, but also to live a life of her choice. And the moment a girl
and break free from oppression now.
Exactly, because the moment a young woman does that, and especially a young woman from within the community, then what she's also doing is that she's maybe very unconsciously, but she is then actually breaking the very foundations of a caste and a gender and a feudal hierarchy in society. I think the other very big myth is that this is something that happens in the back of beyond of India's hinterlands.
True.
Maybe the actual incidents of the killings, and the actual number of killings may be more frequent in rural India, and especially these parts of rural India. But to say that feudalism is something, I think feudalism has become deeply ingrained in the Indian society, and it's deeply ingrained in modern India as well, and in urban India as well. So while, and I think the only reason that there aren't too many killings per se is that it's in urban India is because it's not as easy to build that kind of societal pressure that one can in that self-appointed sort of caste and community leaders can in a village scenario. But at the same time, to say that mentalities are maybe very different is not true. The number of forced marriages that happen even today, and the kind of pressure that there is on young women to get married as soon as they're of a marriageable age, and so you see Anjali's story in the film, who's been struggling to not marry. It's not even a struggle to marry a man of her choice, but she's somebody who's struggling to not marry, and to continue with her education and to lead a life of her, and to lead an independent life, and reach a stage where she is economically independent, so that she's free to take her own decisions. So, so to say that, I think that is one myth that needs to be busted. Even if you look at matrimonial ads, right, which there's a little shot of that in the film.
Yeah.
If you look at matrimonial ads are
getting all the castes and all.
Exactly. Even today in urban India, in matrimonial ads, there's a clear caste. And these are English newspapers, right? And these are caste-based segregation. If you go on websites like Shadi.com or anything, community matrimony or any of that nonsense on the internet, there's always a
tab for castes.
you have to enter your caste if you want to make a profile on those websites. So clearly, India is the kind of state, and India has a strange case where sort of capitalism and feudalism have just gone nicely hand in hand. And one has actually fed off the other,
Now speaking of victims like Anjali, there's Manoj, Babli, Seema. Now, while making the film, it must have been emotionally overwhelming. How did you manage to maintain your objectivity and neutrality?
I don't know. I don't know if I did, because what also happens in a film like this is that you sort of you do tend to build relationships with your protagonists, with the people you're dealing with in the film, because you're repeatedly meeting them, and it's but natural for that to happen. There's a degree of trust that begins to develop, and that's why it's very important as a filmmaker to honor that trust. That really is the biggest challenge when you're making a film of this kind. At the same time. So this is a question I would often ask. I remember discussing this with my editor on several occasions, that there's such a great degree of somewhere we've all come so close at one level, and there's a great relationship and a bond that's developed with all the protagonists and a sense of camaraderie. So am I losing my objectivity in the process? So I don't know yet. I mean, there are no clear answers for things like this. I think I stopped bothering myself with that question after a point, and I said, let's
went
just
ahead with the flow.
Yeah.
Okay, but the documentary took a while to make, I guess. So, what gave you the drive to keep going? I mean, you must have had a certain motivation.
The energy of the protagonists. I mean, so many, not just the protagonists, but the people we would meet who resisted in some form or the other. The fact is that today, when you look at Haryana, and you look at, I mean, the film is essentially dealing with the Jat belt, right? Honor crimes are happening in other parts of the country as well with other castes and communities. But I mean, this film is essentially looking at the Jat belt also because we're looking at it in the context of honor crimes, in the context of Khap Panchayats. Now, when one of the things that comes across is that there is a clear rumbling in this society. There is a clear old feudal structures, while they're getting strengthened, but they're also being challenged in ways that they haven't. Caste structures and caste hierarchies are being challenged. This whole dominant caste status is being questioned. Women are beginning to step out. Young women are, and you see, that is why there is a sudden increase in...
And the public is also developing a resentment towards the system.
Absolutely. I mean, in the sense, marginalized communities, be it Dalits, be it young women, be it the poor, there is definitely a sense of resentment, and there is definitely this kind of transgression, especially from these young women. That is why there is a sudden surge and an increase in honor crimes, right? In the last decade or so. So clearly, it's incredible. It's incredible that when you see the kind of courage that these people have shown. And this courage they've shown and their struggles in such adverse conditions, that's where I derive my energy from. That's where I as a filmmaker derive my energy from.
Okay. And while filming and even after filming, what sort of hurdles did you face? I mean, emotionally, financially, a few death threats maybe?
No, I haven't. There haven't been any death threats. There's been a lot of resentment now that the film's ready, and there's been so many screenings and non-stop screenings across, especially in Delhi and even in Haryana. And there was one at Gorakhpur recently, Bombay. So, I mean, there have been mixed reactions, and mixed reactions even from people within the community. Some have been very appreciative of the film, and some have been very upset with the film.
That is surprising.
No, I mean, obviously, like, even the film talks about a resistance that's coming from within the community, right? So, many people have been very accepting of the film as well, and very appreciative of the effort and of the film.
And that's the thing about the film. Actually, the film actually devotes a considerable amount of time to getting the viewpoint of the Khap Panchayats and the Panchayat elders. Right, so did you at some point, I mean, you must have, but at many points, did you agree with some of their points, or did you, which points were they that you found most at fault? In fact, were there any points that you actually even agreed with, even a bit?
See, what you have to understand is that when you get into the nitty-gritties, you'll say, हाँ नहीं, वो बात थोड़ी ठीक थी. That's not the point. The point is, what is the larger point and what is the larger politics that they're practicing?
Yeah.
What they're essentially trying to do is that in the name of morality and in the name of upholding cultural values and traditions, what is actually being upheld is a caste order in society, is a caste hierarchy. So within that, नहीं उसने मतलब कोई एक ठीक बात कभी बोल दी होगी, वो अलग बात है, मैं उसमें नहीं जा रहा. What is the broader, what is the larger politics that they're practicing? You see, that is the real question. And the larger politics, I mean, if you've seen the film, right, when they keep saying this time and again, ना, कि दलित चाहते हैं कि सब कुछ एक हो जाए, कि एक Shishpal Beniwal says that there is when we talk about fighting the caste system, he says the upper castes are usually wary of this concept, and the Dalits are attracted to this concept, and the Dalits want to get their daughters married and their sons married into upper caste households. And then later, the Pradhan of the Helawat Kaap in the film says that what is the biggest threat to our traditions? He says the biggest threat to our traditions is is the educated youngsters, who question our traditions, Dalit officers who want everything to be equal, and Asabhya Betis who want everything to be equal. Asabhya Beti, and that's where the film derives its name from, right? And I mean, that's the whole point, that equality is such a cuss word in their vocabulary. You know, so clearly it's that larger politics that one has to understand, and that is they're trying to uphold, you know. So it's not about one odd small point here or there. You know, you could be sitting with the biggest fascist on this planet and he might say one small odd thing that might sort of strike a chord, but
and every evil has its own logic to go with.
Absolutely.
Film on a baser level deals with the oppression of women and Dalits. So how prevalent do you think the class and caste struggle is?
See, there is definitely a struggle and there is definitely a resistance, because of which, like I said earlier, there is this sudden surge in these crimes. You see, it's not happened in a vacuum. This kind of caste revival. I mean, you look at Haryana today. What you see, on the one hand, you see these people coming out of the streets demanding Jat reservations, right? At the same time, then you'll see incidents like Mirchpur and Gohana. When the Mirchpur case is transferred to Delhi, then they'll again come out on the streets demanding that the case be brought back to Haryana. Then you see cases like, then you see people coming out on the streets demanding an amendment in the Hindu Marriage Act to ban same-gotra marriages. Now, ultimately, it's the same set of people stoking these caste passions time and again. And it's important for them to stoke these caste passions, because clearly this dominant caste status of theirs and a caste structure that they've ruled the roost in is beginning to sort of crumble gradually. At the same time, you see, with liberalization, what has also happened in this area around Delhi is that there's been a sudden, there's been this amazing real estate boom. And because of this real estate boom, these very strong feudal relations which were beginning to sort of break, feudal hierarchies, have suddenly got a new flippant with these people getting crores and crores overnight by selling their lands. So on the one hand there is this resistance here, but at the same time there is also this strengthening of the feudal forces. So yeah, so there is definitely this resistance, there is definitely this struggle that you say. I mean, look at it this way, right? If a young woman decides to marry a man of her choice and they elope, in spite of being fully aware of the risks involved. Now obviously they're doing this out of love, right? They're not doing this consciously, you're not doing this to question a caste and a feudal hierarchy.
Of course.
But and gender hierarchies also. But the point is that the moment you take this decision, and when you take this decision to marry someone of your own choice, and you elope, being fully aware of the risks involved, you are in many ways, this in itself is a form of resistance. And this very individual resistance, which is not always very organized, this transgression, this resistance is definitely